Picture this, it's 1177 and the mighty Khmer Empire is in flames. Enemy ships have sailed right into the heart of the capital, leaving destruction in their wake. But from these ashes would rise one of history's most remarkable rulers. Today, we're exploring how Jayavarman VII transformed a shattered kingdom into Southeast Asia's greatest empire through an unprecedented combination of military might and Buddhist compassion. You know, what makes this story so fascinating is that Jayavarman VII wasn't some young warrior prince who swooped in to save the day. He was actually in his late 50s when he got his chance to rule.
Wait, really? In his 50s?
Yeah, and here's the thing, he'd spent years basically waiting in the wings. According to historical records, he was born around 1120 to 1125 into the royal family of Angkor, but he didn't become king until 1181.
So what was he doing all that time?
Well, that's where it gets interesting. During his late 30s and early 40s, he actually lived in the neighboring kingdom of Champa, in what's now central Vietnam. He was there when his father, King Darnindravarman II, died in 1160.
Living in what would later become enemy territory. That must have given him some unique insights.
Absolutely. And he needed those insights because when the Cham invaded in 1177, they launched a devastating surprise attack. They sailed right up the Mekong River, across Lake Tonle Sap, and into the heart of the capital.
That sounds like a pretty sophisticated military operation.
It was. The Cham managed to sack the capital of Yasodharapura and kill the king. But this is where Jayavarman VII's moment finally came.
And I'm guessing he made the most of it?
Oh, did he ever. He led the Khmer army in a series of battles that not only drove out the invaders, but eventually led to the conquest of Champa itself. There are actually incredible carvings of these naval battles on the walls of temples like the Bayon and Bante Chmar.
You know, speaking of temples, I noticed something interesting in my research. The famous Angkor Wat wasn't actually built by Jayavarman VII, was it?
No, that's right. Angkor Wat was built earlier by King Suryavarman II in the early 12th century. But Jayavarman VII actually outdid his predecessors with his own building projects.
How so?
Well, he built the massive city of Angkor Thom with the mysterious Bayon Temple at its center. You know, the one with all those enigmatic smiling faces carved into the towers.
And this was all part of his Buddhist vision for the empire, right?
Exactly. And this is what makes him so unique in Khmer history. He was the first king to make Mahayana Buddhism the state religion, breaking with centuries of Hindu tradition.
That seems like a pretty bold move for a new king.
It was, but he did it in a really interesting way. Rather than forcing the change, he integrated Buddhist ideas with traditional Cambodian concepts of kingship.
How did that work exactly?
Well, unlike previous kings who were seen as representatives of Hindu gods, Jayavarman VII positioned himself as a Buddhist ruler who would work for the welfare of his people. He actually introduced what some historians call the first welfare state in Cambodia.
A welfare state in the 12th century?
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. He built an extensive network of hospitals, rest houses, and roads throughout the empire. These weren't just vanity projects. They were practical infrastructure that actually improved people's lives.
You know what's fascinating about that? I read that these rest houses, called dharmasela, weren't just places to sleep, they became important community gathering places.
That's right. They were like the community centers of their day. And this network of infrastructure helped unite the empire in a practical way, making trade and travel easier between different regions.
So he was using architecture and infrastructure to literally build unity.
Exactly. And under his leadership, the Khmer Empire reached its greatest territorial extent, stretching from what's now southern Vietnam all the way to modern-day Laos.
But I have to wonder, all this building and expansion must have put a huge strain on resources, right?
That's actually a really important point. While his building projects were impressive, they required enormous resources and manpower.
Could this have contributed to the empire's eventual decline?
Some historians think so. But it's worth noting that the empire remained strong throughout his long reign. He ruled until around 1218, living to be about 95 years old.
That's an incredibly long reign for any time period, let alone the 12th century.
And he remained active throughout his reign. He was constantly building, expanding, and organizing his empire right up until the end.
You mentioned his Buddhist faith earlier. How did that influence his style of rule?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. His approach to Buddhist kingship was actually quite revolutionary for its time.
How so?
Instead of just claiming divine status like previous kings, he saw himself as working to reduce the suffering of his people, a very Buddhist concept. But he combined this with practical statecraft and military strength.
So he was both a warrior and a spiritual leader?
Exactly. And this dual nature is reflected in his architecture. The Bayon Temple, for instance, combines military might, it's part of a fortified city, with Buddhist symbolism and imagery.
And this was all built in his later years, right?
Yes, which makes it even more impressive. The Bayon was actually built in 3 distinct phases, showing how his vision evolved over time.
It's amazing to think about the energy and vision it took to undertake such massive projects at that age.
And he was deeply influenced by the women in his life, too. His first wife, Jayaraja was very religious and strong-minded, and she shaped his early reign significantly.
Oh, really? Tell me more about that.
After she died, he married her older sister, who was actually a Buddhist scholar. He had previously appointed her as the head professor of an important Buddhist monastery.
Wait, there were female professors in 12th century Cambodia?
Yes, it shows how progressive some aspects of his reign were. He seems to have valued wisdom and capability regardless of gender.
That's fascinating. So how would you sum up his legacy?
Well, he really transformed what it meant to be a king in Southeast Asia. He showed that military strength could be combined with genuine concern for people's welfare.
And created some pretty impressive architecture along the way.
Absolutely. The temples and cities he built are still inspiring people today, nearly 900 years later.
You know what strikes me about this story?
What's that?
Here's a guy who waited decades for his chance to rule, and when he finally got it in his late 50s, he completely transformed his society.
That's so true. He shows that it's never too late to make a massive impact.
And he did it by balancing seemingly opposite forces: military might with Buddhist compassion, tradition with innovation.
Right. He understood that true strength comes from both sword and spirit.
So when we look at those famous smiling faces on the Bayon Temple,
They're not just decorative. They represent this unique combination of power and compassion that defined his reign.
a perfect symbol for a warrior monk king.
Exactly. And a reminder that great leadership requires both strength and wisdom.
Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode of podcasts. From the ashes of invasion, Jayavarman VII built something truly remarkable, an empire that was both powerful and compassionate.
And those smiling faces are still watching over Cambodia today, reminding us that it's possible to be both strong and kind.
Thanks for joining us on this journey through one of history's most fascinating reigns. Remember, it's never too late to transform your world. Just ask the warrior monk king who began his greatest work at age 60.